Good evening and welcome to the Monday, August 2nd Board of Selectmen meeting for the town of Webster. If we could stand and take the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On Zoom tonight, we have Sarah Sampson from the Finance Committee. There are no other attendees on Zoom or via the phone. So tonight, the first order of business is the July 12th, 2021 Board of Selectmen meeting minutes that were previously distributed. Any questions, corrections? If not, I'd entertain a motion for approval.
I'll make a motion to approve the Board of Selectmen regular session meeting minutes from Monday, July 12th, 2021.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Courtney, would you poll the board, please?
Selectman Claiborne?
Yes.
Selectman Contos?
Yes.
Selectman Moore?
Yes.
Selectman Golden?
Yes.
Chairman Becker?
Yes. All righty. Our main reason for meeting this evening is a bad one for the town, a good one for Doug and for his family. It's to accept his letter of resignation and discuss next steps for the appointment of a new town administrator. So, Doug, I think there'll be a little while that we can have to say our real goodbyes. But, you know, whenever you have the town administrator show up in your driveway, he had texted, but I hadn't seen the text. I knew something bad was up. So, you know, certainly, you've had a great 5 years here, and I can't imagine where we would be without your 5 years. And, you know, as I said to you, I think it was Tuesday, if there was any other reason you were leaving other than for family and going to see your, you know, to be close to family and Lisa's parents and have, you know, your children be close to their grandparents, that's the only reason I would not give you a hard time over, so.
Well, and that's really the only reason I would ever leave, so.
I'll let you
Yeah,
go.
I don't have a speech either, but it's been great, and I really appreciate how great the board's been, and you've been very helpful and set a good tone for the town and able to let me do my work, but also provide great feedback and guidance on things as we move forward. And I'm really excited because I know it wasn't me that was helping this last few years. I know that it's a whole team that's been working hard, so I think great things will continue to go even after I'm gone, and wish I could still be a part of it, but well, we'll find a way to keep in touch.
Well, if we have Zoom meetings, you're certainly welcome.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
I'll open it up, any of the board want to have any comments. We will have time, you know, obviously we have at least another one, probably 2 meetings before we bid our formal farewells. So. I don't know if everybody's still in shock like I was.
Yeah.
I think so. I think that's, yeah.
So obviously I need a motion. Doug had sent us this July 27th letter of resignation to be effective on September 3rd. Kindly and I guess expectedly from my standpoint from how Doug has operated, he's also suggested in here that we connect with a former Dudley town manager. So thank you, Doug, for thinking of that as well. But I think the business at hand right now for this agenda item is to, with regrets, accept your resignation. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
We accept the letter of resignation given to the town by Doug Wilson, the town administrator, effective September 3rd.
Second.
And I'll add an addendum with regrets.
With regrets.
Absolutely, thank you. Any further discussion? Courtney, would you poll the board, please?
Selectman Claiborne?
Yes.
Selectman Contos?
Yes.
Selectman Moore?
Yes.
Selectman Golden?
Yes.
Chairman Becker?
Yes. And again, true to fashion, Doug has given us the pertinent sections of the town charter. We have copies of that, either printed or in our information.
Mm-hmm.
So the 2 pages that were, does anybody need it? Because I have it here.
Yep, I have.
You know, that were provided to us. You know, clearly, we will have to have an interim town administrator, and we'll talk about that in a minute if we could, but really the biggest thing we've got to do is we have certain timelines within the provisions of Chapter 7 that we have to meet. The first one being appointing a screening committee And for those of the public who aren't aware, there are 3 positions that are going to be appointed by the town moderator, who, Mr. Avalos is here with us, 2 by the Board of Selectmen, 2 by the Finance Committee, and 2 from the School Committee for a group of 9 for the Screening Committee. According to Chapter 7 of our bylaws, our charter, our bylaws, we have to have that group meet within 30 days of, I believe, the letter.
Of his departure.
Yep.
Oh, is it the letter or the departure?
So becomes known, so no more than 30 days following the date of such a vacancy or pending vacancy becomes known. So I'm going to call that July 27th, because that's the day we received Doug's letter. So that's under 7-4. We look to have a screening committee appointed. So with those timelines in place, I thought from the board standpoint, we're going to have to talk about appointing a couple members. Mr. Avalos, Ted, when you're ready, we'll have you come on up and maybe describe how you would want to do it. I have reached out to the Finance Committee as well and let them know, and I do believe the School Committee is aware as well. And the goal there is to try and get as broad a group of folks as we, can possibly have that represents the community. From there, the Screening Committee will meet within that 30-day timeframe, no more than 30 days, and then provide a report to the board with recommendations or a recommendation for a new town administrator, which this board will then take up. That has to be done within 150 days following the date of which the committee is organized, has its first meeting. So from a process standpoint, that's the process. We'll have to talk about job posting, how the committee, when it's appointed, is going to do the job posting, make sure we have an appropriate, job description and salary and whatnot in there. Whether or not there's going to be a budget, the screening committee would have to come up with that. If the screening committee is going to look to do anything with hiring some help to get them along the way. And then just talk a little bit more about the timeline, which I've generally outlined now. So why don't I open it up, first off to Ted. Thank you for coming in, Ted. You have 3 selections as town moderator. Use them wisely, as they say, but maybe you could describe how you would intend to.
Well, I began to compile a list of, individuals that I think might be appropriate for the committee, but I would also entertain suggestions and/or input from the community if they wish to serve on that committee. I know that the 3 boards will be doing the same, so if somehow we can coordinate that so that I have an opportunity to look at those lists, I think that would be appropriate. It would be easier than me submitting a request to, for names of those who are interested. So I would like to work with the 3 boards, I think, before finalizing my selections.
From our standpoint, Ted, we've got to talk about whether or not we want to have 1 member, no members from the board, 1 member from the board, or 2. Obviously, we have 2 selections, and so I'm not sure if we, as a board, are going to solicit input from the public or not. That's a decision I think this board will talk about tonight. And I'm not sure what the Finance Committee or the School Committee will do as well. But I hope that the Finance Committee will meet and the School Committee will meet ASAP in order to let everyone know what their prerogative is with regards to appointing 1 or 2 or none of their own committee members. So
I would assume then that someone, if not the board, has approached these committees, letting them know,
Yes.
that they have 2 choices for the committee, and that they should be meeting in
short order.
quickly, right?
And Doug, you can, I know
Yeah,
you've-
I approached both the Finance Committee and School Committee. And Finance Committee was trying to meet this week, but, so,
I know the school committee is on a summer schedule, so they will probably need to have a special meeting.
yeah. And I think if
in
need be,
advance.
I'll contact the chair and let her know that if they can even do a Zoom meeting, whatever they can do to do it as soon as possible.
Great.
It will help your process.
Absolutely. Yep.
Ted, with regards to your process, would you then suggest that anyone hearing of the meeting, we'll put it on the, put it on our website as well, on Facebook, that if there is an interest, to send a letter to you with the moderator, Town of Webster address.
That's probably would be the best, yeah.
With-
Either, but via email, which is on the website, or if they wish to send it in writing, care of the town hall, I will receive it that way too.
Great. I know we are meeting again in a week, at least that's what we're scheduled to.
Yes.
Meet in a week, so, we can settle some of the things that don't get squared away tonight, if any. So, and we'll wait and hear, as soon as we hear from school committee and finance committee, and we get a decision from our board, we'll certainly let you know.
Okay.
Great. So unfortunately, it's a well-trodden path 5 years ago. Sorry, Doug, don't mean to make you feel too badly. Not that you do. Or you should.
Good.
So why don't I open up, if I could, to our board. Two things to really talk about is our appointments, and then secondly, Doug has put in here his recommendation for an interim town administrator, and I had a conversation with Greg Valiakonis, and I forwarded along his resume as well in anticipation of a conversation. So first, can we maybe talk a little bit about what do we want to do with our two appointments?
I'd like to ask a question before we actually have the dialogue. In the last search, what was the approach that we used with respect to the committee? Did we have a member of the Board of Selectmen on that initial screening, or did we appoint people? How well did that work? What worked well, what didn't? I'd really like to see what in the past has worked and see if we can build on that.
Well, there were two screening committees. I don't want to dive into too much detail because it dragged out for quite a period of time. So the first committee had three. I was on the board as the representative from the selectmen. And the selectmen also had appointed another person
Okay.
on that. When the three individuals didn't, I'll say, pass muster or weren't accepted by the board, a new screening committee was then formed. I don't believe there were any members from the board, so any Board of Selectmen members. At that point, the town moderator had four picks. So I think we only had one. The assessor had one, school committee two, and I might be off, finance committee may have had one, and we had two. I believe we
yeah,
only had
something like
one.
that.
Because
Yeah, because there was a bylaw change, I believe, after that.
Yeah, within the past 2 years, we've had a bylaw change. So the assessor no longer being an elected position, it's obviously an appointed position, that was removed. That selection, that choice for the screening committee was removed. And you ended up with where we are today, which is the 2-2-2 for finance, Board of Selectmen and school, and then 3 for the town moderator.
So in that experience, in one instance, we had one member of the Board of Selectmen that participated in the initial screening. The second time around, there were none. Pros and cons to that approach? I'm just curious.
I was on the second committee,
You weren't the
appointed by
selectman
the
at the time.
finance committee. But I thought it went very well, and
What was the process that was used and how did it work?
we advertised in the state paper, the state bulletin.
The MMA.
And MMA, and there was other advertisements. We solicited candidates, went over resumes, whittled I think there was like 13 or 14 candidates, whittled it down, and met with them, and some people were out of state. We had teleconference meetings and whittled it down and voted on recommendation. Doug was one of the ones that were recommended by that committee. I think there was 3 candidates presented to the board. Or was
Ultimately,
it
4.
Four,
Yeah.
yeah.
The one that was originally,
Right.
the one that was originally selected when we went to contract talks, decided not to take the job. Then we ended up ultimately with 3 here to make a decision by the board.
Yeah.
And it was a similar process for the first committee, except the first committee selections were all rejected, or 2 of the 3, having read a few things in the paper, decided to pull their names from it. So it was, I actually liked the idea of having a selectman on it, but I would not offer to serve on it. If any of you wish to, take, the thing now is we have 2 selections. two seats.
My opinion is, having worked on the charter committee and involved with the bylaw committee and getting these amendments, changes made, my feeling is the select board is the ultimate committee to choose. And I don't know if it's good, bad, or indifferent to have a selectman on a selection committee who's going to later vote. I don't.
I'm sorry, I missed it. Who's going to what?
I'm sorry?
I missed what you said. Last sentence.
You're talking about having a selectman on the committee.
A selectman on the committee who's ultimately going to be the decision maker for the final selection of 5 selectmen. I think it went fine without it, but
That was.
that's my opinion.
That was my thoughts too, is with having the screening committee, their job is to screen out the candidates. I think it would be kind of redundant to have a sitting selectman also be on that screening committee. Since we make the final selection, we get the top 3 to 5 candidates who come before the board, and then we get to interview and ask them questions. But I'd be open to whatever the board is
and
looking for.
I don't want to sway you one way or the other, but I would, if it was me, I think it might be nice to have someone that is involved in the process and you know what you want better than a screening committee would. So if need be, you could kind of, a member of the selectmen can a little bit steer that committee if need be.
Yeah, and I would say maybe not as much steer, but having one selectman of our 2 know each candidate really a lot better than we would ever be able to do it. You may end up with a different group of 3 to 5 with some additional input to, provide how our board works, how the town works. So, I mean, I would suggest that we do have one of our 2 picks.
I would just say.
Maybe not chair it.
Yeah.
But participate.
I just remember Ted was the most intimidating, so maybe, oh, that's good or bad?
Well, maybe that's a question. As a person who went through a screening committee process, Doug, would you have found it helpful to have somebody who was a sitting selectman there to answer like procedural questions regarding the town or specific questions regarding the process or the day-to-day operations?
Well, one thing we can't change this now, but I feel like a screening committee of 9 is actually pretty big and kind of a little intimidating. But I think it makes sense to have someone on the board because as a candidate, it's like, well, who am I meeting with if it's not anyone that's actually making a final decision? So I've seen it go both ways. Like in other interviews I've been a part of, you have department heads as kind of the screening committee, and then the selectmen do it after that, but.
Tom, Lisa, any?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there should be at least one member on the screening committee that knows how the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator work together and knows what the requirements of the job are, I think, a little bit better than some of the other members of the screening committee. So I would say 1 and 1.
Lisa, any thoughts?
My initial gut was that if we have members of the community who are interested in taking those 2 spots because we have that final review, that I would be comfortable not having a member of the Board of Selectmen participate in that initial round. But again, that's assuming we have enough interest to fill all of those. If we didn't, then I would be in support of, trying to have at least one, Board of Selectmen. But I think given the fact that we get to make that final decision, I would hope that the candidates who are applying have a good understanding of how towns operate and what that relationship would be like, that representation from one selectman wouldn't really sway that or give that much insight to change the outcome. That's just my take.
And it's really only a screening committee. It's not a selection committee.
Right.
This further on down the road, the process continues, so.
And I think we got a...
Yeah, Sarah actually sent a note in. We can just bring that. Or Sarah, if you wish, you can take yourself off mute if you're on mute, and go ahead and speak up. Can you hear me,
Oh,
Sarah?
she was muted.
Yeah, I'm on my phone, so it comes in and out.
Okay, go ahead. If you, I see you sent a note through chat, but if maybe you just want to elaborate on that.
Okay, well, I know that I'm going to be on it from finance, but I know Earl was on the last time, and so the committee doesn't have to start from scratch. You know, we don't want, it would be good to have somebody from the Board of Selectmen, is my opinion.
Are you volunteering, Earl? As having experience?
Earl is cringing.
What did I do to you?
Process.
Thank you.
Maybe one thing to suggest, you only meet with these people for like maybe an hour,
Yeah.
like a half an hour maybe with the screening committee, an hour with the selectmen. This is a big decision to make on just like an interview, and obviously some of the skills of an interview translate well to being a town administrator, but not all of them. So if the screening committee wanted to come up with a different sort of assessment, that might serve the town well, but that makes it a lot more complex.
Yeah, and as we all know, everything has to be done in public. So other than the fact that people are submitting their names, they will have executive sessions for those initial interviews until the screening committee makes its 3 to 5 selection, then it becomes public.
Yep.
And then we want to make sure that that's done in an appropriate way, which is ultimately where one of at least the first committee meeting kind of failed. So, well, there's varying opinions. I guess I'd like to at least get a decision on, are we going to do one here and then put out a note to the public and ask for a second, or if you want to have none, I'll entertain a motion either way. To have either one selectman, 2 selectmen, or 0 selectmen on the screening committee.
I'll make a motion to have 0 selectmen and try to appoint 2 town community members.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Under further discussion, I would prefer what Doug is suggesting and what Sarah is suggesting. I think having one of us get a little more in-depth knowledge of the person would be helpful. So that's my comment.
If I could just make a comment too, Mr. Chairman, having sat on multiple committees on the school side, we've hired, I think I was on 3 or 4, were responsible for different superintendent selections at the time, thinking that each board is selecting people that are going to represent them. So the school committee is going to have 2 selections. They're going to be interested in school business and, what is a town administrator, going to represent in the town and apply that to the school district. The finance committee is obviously looking for people who are going to be looking at a town administrator who knows the finances and, is up to date on all of the financial laws and regulations or what have you. So I think having each board, by having a selection, they are representing a different section of the community. So, and then that allows the moderator to go outside those selections and choose 3 members from the community that, have no interest literally in either of those sections, but are kind of like at large, people who are just interested in, working with the committee and finding the best candidates.
I tend to agree with you.
I just think that when you're screening the candidates, you're going to come up with a list of characteristics and experience you want from the candidates. You're going to come up with the questions that you want answered. And I think because the town administrator spends so much time with the Board of Selectmen, you're going to want a representative of the board, because that representative from the Board of Selectmen understands what the board is looking for in a candidate.
I actually have a question on the persons that we can designate, because it clearly does say persons there. Any one of the department heads could also express interest as well. Is there anything in here that says they can't? Because I kind of, to your point, the people that this person really works closer with are some of the department heads as well.
Right.
More so than just the committee. So I think cross-representation is helpful. If we didn't have a say in that process at all, I would have a different take on this, but that's just my perspective.
Just, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I was a representative of the school committee as the school business manager. So it's not necessarily has to be a member of the board, but it should probably be someone in the building. At least one of the candidates, I think, would be appropriate.
You know, and I think when the screening committee makeup was thought of, having the moderator represent kind of the town at large, as you said it, was really the impetus for getting people outside of town government involved in it. So I don't want to be repetitive. If there's any other comments? Because right now we have a motion on the table to have none of the Board of Selectmen appointed to the committee. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that?
The only thing I'd like to comment on that particular motion, I know I seconded it, but certainly if we get no interest, I mean, we have to rethink that, right? If we don't get anybody that steps up with that.
Right. Sure. And I think to your point earlier, there are pros and cons of having a department head, because you've got someone on the screening committee who's going to report to this person. So that's, a little bit, it could be a little bit awkward, but.
Except I'll say on the contrary, that's within the private sector. That same type of thing also happens. I know that from my own experience, so.
And I do have someone, well, we should vote first, I presume. We're getting a little off the tangent.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to not appoint any of the board on the screening committee. Any further discussion? Courtney, would you pull the board, please?
Selectman Claiborne?
No.
Selectman Contos?
Yes.
Selectman Gabor?
Yes.
Selectman Zolda?
Yes.
Chairman Becker?
No. All right, so we have taken a vote to not have any Board of Selectmen member. So now we should talk about how we're going to ask for input. So whether we're going to talk here about, should it be a department head? Should it be a request such as what Mr. Avalos is going to do, sending it out to the public and asking for people to step up and provide their reasons for being on it, their background, et cetera?
We need some way to, if we're going to have two people, which we are, we need to have some way to let them know what the board is looking for and what the board is interested in the characteristics of a candidate that we're interested in. And I know that they're going to come before us for final vote, but you want the people that are coming before us to have at least some experience that we as a board would be looking for. I don't think you want the two candidates, or not the two candidates, but the two representatives of the Board of Selectmen having meetings without any idea of what we as a board are looking for, because they're the two people that are representing us.
So
Well,
that's a,
Yeah, go ahead.
to the chair, question. So the job description, the duty of creating the job description and the requirements and qualifications, is that something that the screening committee is tasked with doing? Or that's what we do at the Board of Selectmen? So it'll be us to put together the posting that's going to go out for publication?
Yeah, I
So
would
that-
say this board should approve what's
that-
going to be.
What's going to go out. So that would be
Our
our
part in
way
that
of giving
process.
our input of what we're looking for, if we're looking for somebody that has experience turning around towns or continuing in economic growth possibilities. Doug can even give us some input on what he feels after having been here for 5 years.
But I think to Tom's point, it might very well make sense to meet with the people.
Yeah.
And know who is in fact representing us, because we may not all know the individuals that are selected.
Right, I would make a motion that if we're, and for the appointment process, that we solicit names and then have another selectmen's meeting to interview those people and then make our appointment.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second.
And just for discussion, I would say this is like any other appointment. People should express their interest of why they want to do this and what they think they bring to the table. I think that's important.
Absolutely.
So one of the points I'll bring up is one of time. Had we selected 2 people from here, we would be done our appointment. So now we have to give time to the public, of which Ted will have to do too, or has expressed a desire to do. And then what do we do with setting a deadline for that? Do we want to set next Monday? If you're interested, make sure you respond to us. Be prepared to participate in our meeting, because I don't want to wait too long. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously,
I agree.
we need to get the word out, but we also need to, again, get our job done, now that it's not going to be any selectmen. So I would ask maybe an amendment to the motion to include what I had just expressed, which is
That's because our next regularly scheduled meeting is for the Monday, the 9th.
correct.
Yep, so I'd ask that anybody who's interested to submit their letter of interest to the Board of Selectmen prior to Monday, the 9th, so that we can have that on our agenda for Monday.
Asking if we had enough time since we post the agenda on Thursday, do we have the people's names on the agenda to interview?
Oh, to be
To be
appointed.
interviewed? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
Probably not.
I mean, we're not appointing them to a job, but we do, for every other committee, we have to put their name down, so.
I would think that we would be able to amend it on Friday, if we've got all the names.
Yes.
Sure.
And that way, we can have an amended posting, and then we can, so we give a deadline of 12 noon Friday, as, again, Andrew, is part of the motion, if we can include that.
Yeah, I'll amend my motion.
So the motion would be to solicit public input if people are interested in serving on the screening committee as the representatives of the Board of Selectmen, that they submit their letter of request to be on that committee by noontime on Friday, this Friday, and then to be prepared to, be ready to talk on Monday.
How do we notify these individuals?
Provide again, I'll leave it to Courtney and Doug with regards to the posting of this on our Facebook.
Yeah,
and
we'll put it on
website.
social media and the website. And then on Friday afternoon, we can notify them to be prepared to attend this meeting next Monday.
But, yeah.
So we can post that, and we can post it for the selectmen. Do we post something separate for the moderator's appointments, or do we just kind of make it generic and the selectmen can choose 2 out of those, and the moderator could choose 3 out of those?
I'll ask for Ted's input.
I would
Makes
ask
it
for
easier.
assistance here. I don't really have access to any social media
Yeah.
right now. And so my only access would be through the website, but I'm not sure there are too many people that look at the moderator's website
right,
with any
right.
consistency. So I would ask if you could include
Yeah.
the
The
list of
moderator.
all.
Yeah, it would seem weird to me to have like, okay, if you want to be a selectman's appointment, use this link. If you want to use a moderator's appointment, yeah, just,
Yeah, I think just saying that the selectmen have 2 appointments, the town moderator has 2 appointments, the intent, we'll use it that way, the intent is to select people from this broad-based solicitation, to have the moderator have his 3 picks and the board have their 2 picks. That gets it done as quickly as we can.
yeah. And if you'd like, I can mention to department heads that if they were interested in doing that, they could be one of the ones to submit their information, and the board could review them with everyone else. I do think at least one department head on the screening committee would be good, just, they know the day-to-day more than anyone else.
I would hate to have 5 department heads,
Right.
just in response to Lisa, we want to have,
Not maybe
I think,
all of
good
them.
representation.
Right, I agree.
So, all right, so motion, and we have a second? Did I hear a second? Any further discussion?
I second the amended motion.
Thank you. Motion and a second on the amended motion. Courtney, would you poll the board, please?
Selectman Clifford?
Yes.
Selectman Contos?
Yes.
Selectman Kabor?
Yes.
Selectman Zolda?
Yes.
Chairman Becker?
Yes. Okay, so that takes care of the appointment. Thank you, Ted.
Thank you.
And getting the word out. And Doug, you've talked to FinCom chair and school committee chair. So we'll ask them to expedite as well, maybe a follow-up call
Yep.
tomorrow, just to let them know how we voted. And then the next item, probably, even more important, is September 3rd is Doug's last day. So we'll need someone for approximately, based on the time frame, up to a half a year. As I said earlier, nicely, Doug is suggesting someone. It is someone that I know, Doug, maybe you can describe your relationship.
Yeah, so I met Greg probably 10 years ago, but he, as you know, was the administrator in Dudley, and we work closely with the dispatch center, and so he has been a professional in Massachusetts, or I forget what his resume said, but a long
36
time.
years.
Yeah, and he was in, is it North Reading or just Reading? And he was there for many, many years.
North Reading.
Yeah, and he most recently served as an interim at Blackstone. So he knows, he has an idea of what the interim will be doing. He's very interested. He's like, oh, I would love to do that. It would help out a community I know. Dudley's still involved in a lot of things that we do here, so it would be helpful. And he's probably more familiar with our town than anyone else that would be available.
And I would say from my, working relationship with him, I've worked with Greg on the Southern Worcester County Communications Center. He represented Dudley, as Doug represents Webster on that. I've just think the world of him. I think he did a great job. He retired, I would say, with distinction from Dudley. And then, he's wrapped up his job now that ended with the appointment of the Blackstone town administrator or town manager, I'm not sure. I do have a copy of the agreement that he had with the town of Blackstone. I think if people are comfortable, we can maybe have a couple of us meet with him, kind of negotiate something. If you're not comfortable, we can always have him come before us. There's a little twist there. He's not available next Monday, so we'd have to set something up for the 16th. Or the alternative is, to ask two of us to, kind of set it up based upon Doug's recommendation and the fact that we do have his existing memorandum of agreement for Blackstone. Entertain discussion from there. And you do have a copy. I think I sent a copy of
Of
his
his,
resume.
yes.
He'd be approached for a 6-month period with the possibility of having to extend, is that?
Yeah, I think in his agreement that he had just sent me this, it was, he would work until the actual appointment was made.
Okay.
So which in our case, our bylaw says 6 months, but it was open-ended in this. And, Greg worked, I think somewhere between 3.5 days a week. We'd have to talk to him about that. Maybe we need 4, maybe 3.5 is okay. But we'd have to talk, about that. And we'd, of course, have to formally come to a formal agreement with him through the board. To get the, all the, let's get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
I'm just suggesting it may make sense to have a couple of us do the legwork and then come back with a proposal. That's kind of the easiest way I see of doing it. And, just to backstep a little bit, the good thing is that, we saw the pressures that it put on having our prior town accountant, who I think did a great job as acting interim, but obviously that comes at a cost. And, so I think having someone who's capable, not involved in our town operations now, and willing and known, that's, I appreciate Doug for thinking of that. I appreciate Greg for saying that he's available and willing to do it. And he knows the town. I think he knows, how the town has progressed very well under Doug's leadership, too. So that's all I have to say on it.
So are you saying that his wishes are 3.5 to 4 days a week, or?
I'd say that if you take my suggestion, if we vote on that, I would say that, the two selectmen should discuss that with him. Maybe it makes sense, and obviously include Doug in that conversation. I would expect Doug to be working with, again, if my suggestion is acceptable, working with two of us to come up with an agreement, including pay, including amount of time spent here. I don't think Greg is looking to work 40 hours, but I think, 3 full days, maybe 3.5. what he's
So
doing now.
I believe he worked about 25 hours a week in Blackstone.
And I think the good thing is, from a timing standpoint, if there's any good coming out of this, is that it's a more relatively quiet time. We don't have annual meeting coming up, we have our October meeting coming up. I don't think there's any union negotiations, maybe one.
It might wrap up before he even gets here.
So if I could say, hopefully be a little quieter between now and January, knock on wood.
Yeah.
Doug, do you have anything else to add?
I'll just reiterate, I don't think there's a more capable person available. Yeah, of anyone in the world, he's probably the best person.
Sorry, to the chair, are you looking for a motion from the board for us to set up an interview, contract negotiation with Greg to act as the interim town administrator?
Yes.
So then I'll make a motion that the board authorize two selectmen to enter in a negotiation with Greg Balcones to act as the interim town administrator.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Under discussion, Greg did say that he would be available for that last week, so that there is some overlap, which I think is very important too, to have some overlap. Although Doug will be 1 foot out the door, I'm sure he'll.
He
give
just
us
wants
his
to
all.
come for the goodbye party. Yeah.
So any further discussion on the motion to appoint two members of the board to act in a contracting capacity, to come up with a contract to recommend for the full board to vote on? Okay. Courtney, would you poll the board, please?
Selectman Claiborne?
Yes.
Selectman Contos?
Yes.
Selectman DeBoer?
Yes.
Selectman Zolda?
Yes.
Chairman Becker?
Yes. And now, who would wish to be on said contract committee? I would prefer not to be. My plate's kind of full. I would suggest maybe Andrew is one of the two as vice chair.
I have no problem doing that. I've sat on contract negotiations with other town administrators in the past. So if the board's willing, I'd be willing to act as one of the representatives from the board.
Do we want to nominate one and one, or are you look?
Well, maybe does anyone else have an expression of interest? Do all three of you want to, and then we can?
I generally won't be able to meet during the working hours for that, so I need to eliminate myself from that discussion.
I'd be willing to work with Andrew to speak with Greg and Doug.
Any desire to?
I'd be willing to do that, too.
So, okay.
If you,
You can do it.
whatever.
You're okay with that? You with having Earl do it?
Yeah.
Otherwise, we can vote,
No, I'm fine with doing it.
Okay. So if that's the case, I'll entertain a motion to appoint Earl and Andrew as the two Board of Selectmen members.
So moved. He said that very nicely, so.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. Courtney, would you poll the board, please?
Selectman Claiborne?
Yes.
Selectman Contos?
Yes.
Selectman DeBoer?
Yes.
Selectman Zolda?
Yes.
Chairman Becker?
Yes. And that takes care of our official agenda. I don't know, Doug, if you had any items?
The only thing is the proclamation that went handed around. So there's a group that was doing a run for DMD, and so they stopped through a lot of Subaru dealerships throughout Massachusetts, and they came to our Long Subaru, and they're trying to generate interest and awareness for DMD, and I think our proclamation will help their cause.
Yeah, I think so too. So we've actually seen the proclamation, so if I can have a vote, if we're okay with that, to authorize the issuance of that citation as proposed.
I'll make a motion to authorize the proclamation.
Okay, we have a motion-
Second.
Motion and a second. I will note that we want to thank Long Subaru of Webster, for helping to sponsor this. And the individual there, Sarah Brunel, was key in organizing all that. And thank the chief of police, Chief Shaw, because he helped get them through town and had an escort for them as well. This all happened on July 10th.
It's too bad it went unnoticed.
Yeah, we would have.
Yeah, I didn't even know.
I had said to Doug, I said, I wish we would have known beforehand.
Yeah.
But it is when I looked the cause up, it's a very
Yeah.
worthy cause, and I think it will help. We can list their website, and when our communication, put it on our Facebook page.
I think Earl would have ran with them.
Well, it was a walk, so it would have been easier.
The first tenth of a mile.
All right, any further discussion? A motion to approve the citation as written. Courtney, would you pull the board?
Selectman Claiborne?
Yes.
Selectman Contos?
Yes.
Selectman Goulart?
Yes.
Selectman Zolda?
Yes.
Chairman Beck?
Yes, and with that, we'll conclude and reserve our roasting for Doug at a future meeting. Thank you.